Have you ever wondered why some things feel wrong, but others say they're perfectly fine? Who gets to decide? Is it society, personal feelings, or something bigger? If there are no moral absolutes, then what's stopping anyone from justifying anything? I'm not just talking about little things, like whether it's wrong to cut in line at Starbucks. I mean the big stuff. Morality, ethics, those deep questions that people debate all the time. Because if we don't have a standard to measure right and wrong, then we're in trouble. Moral relativism, the idea that there are no moral absolutes, just doesn't work. And I'll explain why. But first, let's check out this video with Frank Turek and Mav.
Okay, so my question for you is, if God said that there is going to be male and female, and then there's some variety within that called intersex people, why do you guys insist on this binary definition of sex when clearly biology is not so binary? There are intersex people, and you'll say, oh, it's just 1% of people, etc., etc. And then also, let's extend that to same-sex relationships. So you have someone who's born heterosexual, bisexual, or homosexual. So why is there this thing where God would say, that's fine, but that's not fine? And he creates them knowingly like that. And then in the past, the church has said these people are mentally ill, they deserve to be, put in institutions, penalized, etc., etc. I mean, I could go on and on about that. But my question is, why do you say that if I'm going to be a Christian again, then I need to repent from being LGBTQI+, and then accept this narrow version of the gospel? That to me is like conversion therapy, and the UN and all these other major medical organizations in the US and around the world have called that torture. So for you to stand here and to defend that, that's pretty messed up. What is your response to that?
Well, Mav, let me ask you a question. What is your standard of morality?
Mav brought up the LGBTQI+ issues. But why did Frank Turek shift the conversation to morality so quickly? Here's the thing. It wasn't to dodge the question. It's because morality is the foundation of any answer here. Frank is not ignoring the question. He's starting from the root of the issue, something we often overlook when we get into these kinds of debates.
I'm a secular humanist. I think that everybody is innately good.
What do you mean by good?
Well, obviously murder is wrong.
Why?
Because if I went and murdered someone's kid, then that mother or father would not have a child, and they would be in mourning, and that caused them some great psychological turmoil for the rest of their lives and trauma they're going to have to work through in therapy. So objectively, we can see psychologically, they're not going to be doing too hot. So of course, but that's objectively wrong.
Why is it objectively wrong to harm people?
Because if we are going to come together as a society and cooperate as a human race, we need to have some sort of moral standard to bind us together, regardless if there's a God or not.
But whose moral standard? I mean, Hitler had a pretty tight moral standard within Germany. Why was he wrong?
Well, obviously he was wrong on many levels. I mean, the fact that he murdered millions of people.
But by what standard? Why is it wrong to murder people?
Well, I'm just going to say, within my own experience, if I witness the murder of someone, which I gratefully have not, I would be, obviously, there would be a sinking feeling inside of me, like, wow, I just witnessed the loss of someone's life. That's a terrible thing to see. Like if someone got ran over by a car and it was so quick and you just didn't see it coming, of course that would screw someone up for life. So to me, it's you don't have to attribute it to whether there's a God or not. Psychologically, the way that my brain is going to see that is wow, I just saw harm inflicted onto another human.
Yes, you're describing how you know something's wrong. The question
it's
is
a psychological feeling, a physiological reaction.
The question is, why is it wrong if there's no God?
So wait, can you repeat that last thing?
Yeah, you're explaining one of the ways you might know that something's wrong. The question is, why is it wrong if there's no God?
Well, I just think that as a society, we wouldn't be able to just say oh, we should allow murder. We should allow this and stuff to happen because obviously slavery was wrong. We abolished that, obviously. Okay. You're bringing up all sorts of moral wrongs. But I'm saying...
Now this back and forth is interesting. Mav talks about people being innately good, which is a common idea. But what does that mean? Is there a universal definition of good? Mav is talking about trauma and the emotional impact on people. That's important because it shows how deeply emotions are tied to our sense of right and wrong. But psychologically, people often confuse emotional reactions with moral standards. But feelings aren't the same thing as objective morality. We feel bad when someone gets hurt, but that doesn't explain why hurting someone is wrong in the first place. Then Frank Turek asks a tough question. If there is no God, why is harming people objectively wrong? This isn't a random question. Frank's trying to get Mav to think about the basis of morality. If morality is just what feels right, then someone like Hitler could argue that his actions felt right to him, which obviously doesn't sit well with anyone, of course. It shows that you can't base morality on personal feelings or social agreements because those change. After that, Mav starts sharing more of his thoughts, but he's not really addressing Frank's question anymore. It kind of becomes a monologue, and honestly, I get it. Mav's emotional, maybe even going through something personal, which is understandable. But this issue still stands. If morality is relative, then things like slavery or genocide could be justified under certain conditions. And none of us really believe that's okay. So the idea that everything is relative just falls apart when you think about it. Now let's shift back to what Mav asked earlier. Why did God create people who are homosexual or bisexual? And here's where we need to break things down. So first of all, God created man and woman, male and female. But at birth, kids don't have this awareness of gender or sexuality. That develops over time, influenced by family, society, media, and personal experience. Psychologists like Albert Bandura explain that children learn gender roles and identity by watching their parents, friends, and even what they see on TV. It's a learned behavior more than something you're born with. As kids grow, they start to understand what it means to be male or female based on what they see and experience. So when we talk about gender identity, it's not something set in stone at birth. It's shaped by a combination of biological factors and the environment they grow up in. And that is why saying God made me this way isn't the full picture. Our experiences and our choices play a huge role in shaping who we are. Now let me bring Ben Shapiro into the conversation. He has some thoughts about why this matters in society, especially when it comes to raising kids.
Now the question that's constantly being asked, so why do you even care? Why do you even pay attention? And the answer is because...
I was asked that earlier today.
Oh, really? What did you say?
I'm not letting the cat have my tongue.
Yeah.
It's like it has nothing to do with gender as far as I'm concerned, or that's peripheral in some sense. So the accusation, why do you care? Fair enough. It's like, you know, in some way, people can go to hell in a handbasket if they're inclined to. Mm-hmm. Now, I would rather have that not happen, but people are, what would you say, doomed to their own autonomy. But I'm not saying words that other people want me to say. And the idea of compelled speech, it's like, the bill was this much about gender.
Right.
And it was this much about,
right.
Oh yeah, the government's going to tell me what to say, hey.
But
now they're regulating what therapists can say, therapy sessions.
This is interesting because to me, the problem with a lot of this is less a free speech issue, even though I'm on the same page with you. Mm-hmm. And to me, it really is a fundamental truth issue. Meaning that, yeah, you're trying to force me to say something I don't want to say. Mm-hmm. But to me, the fact that what you're trying to force me to say is so innately opposed to the good is the problem. Like you could try. I would have objections to you forcing me to say that I like a particular movie, right? Mm-hmm. It may not be true. I don't like the particular movie. It would be bad if you tried to force me to say that. But the level of passion that I have for issues like this one really go to the fact that I think the fundamental good of humanity relies on basic acknowledgments of biological truth, especially when it comes to gender. Mm-hmm. And anybody who's ever dealt with children, I find myself getting, if I look at my own political evolution, I would say that when I grew up in a religious home, so that means that pretty conservative. And then you go to college and you're living by yourself and you're not married, you don't have kids. You tend to become a little bit more libertarian, which is like, okay, let everybody do whatever they're going to do and it's not going to bother me. And then you have kids and you realize that there's a pool in which we are all swimming. And that pool is going to define...
Virginia.
Exactly. Like my kid, it's going to determine how my kid lives. And I want my community to reflect some of my values because I don't want my kid to live in the toxic sludge that you are creating for my kid. I don't want you indoctrinating my kids in bullshit about whether
yes, exactly.
a boy can be a girl or a girl can be a
People will say, well, I'll exceed, but not for my children. Yeah. And that's what Virginia demonstrated. It's like, you can come after me, but you come after my kids, and that's a whole different story.
Here's what's important. Both Ben and Jordan Peterson are pointing out something crucial. The whole debate around gender and morality isn't just about personal choice. It's about how these choices affect society as a whole, especially kids. When people ask, why do you care? The answer is simple. We care because the ideas we accept in society will impact the next generation. You can't just raise your kids in a bubble. Everyone's affected by the culture around them. Ben is right when he says we're all swimming in the same pool. That's why it's important to have discussions about truth and morality. And here's the thing, figuring out if you're right or wrong isn't something you do alone. You have to put your ideas out there, let them get challenged, and see how they hold up. No one has a built-in moral compass that always points to the truth. We test our ideas in the real world by comparing them with others and seeing how they measure up. If we didn't do that, how would we ever know if we are wrong? You can't just sit back and think, I'm right because I feel right. That's not how it works. Truth has to be tested, debated, and proven over time. And if you think science is all about cold, hard facts, well, you might be surprised at what we'll talk about in the next video. So if you found this video helpful, or you've got some thoughts of your own, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.